Good evening. It's 6:30 on Tuesday, May 19th. We'll call the special called meeting of the Culpeper County Board of Supervisors to order. We have an agenda before us. Are there any additions or deletions? Hearing none, we will continue as presented. So specifically what we're going to do is we're going to go through new business and old business, and then if we complete that prior to 7 o'clock, we're going to call a recess till 7 o'clock when we will have our public hearing. So with that, first, new business, Mr. McCrum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first item under new business is the board will consider authorizing a public hearing to grant the Town of Culpeper an easement on the tax map number listed there as a part of the Encompass Building renovation project. So Siva, if you could go quickly to the map that I have up there. So the background on this is Encompass Community Supports Building, the building by the hospital right there, is undergoing interior renovations, and as a result of that, the town has requested that we grant a sidewalk easement to allow additional pedestrian traffic and then allow maintenance of said sidewalk and easement. So the recommendation from staff is to proceed with the public hearing for granting the Town of Culpeper that sidewalk easement for the renovation project.
Great. Is there any discussion or a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to go ahead and make that motion that the board approves the authorization of the public hearing to grant the Town of Culpeper a permanent sidewalk easement on tax map number 50-21D1 as part of the Encompass Building renovations project.
Is there a second? Second. We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Next up, old business, Mr. McCrum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The primary item under old business is the board will discuss and consider both a Fiberlync easement and license agreement for use of Len Park. So specifically, Fiberlync, their project is kicking off next month, the broadband expansion project, and they have requested license and easement for Len Park to install, maintain, and operate a cabling node for the fiber optic network that they're putting in. If you could go to the exhibit there. So the node will go in adjacent to the community building there, as you can see where the yellow dot is. And if you scroll down, you can see exactly what the node will look like. That just demonstrates the easements. And continue. And that is what the node will look like. In exchange for this easement and license agreement, Fiberlync will be providing free Wi-Fi services to the patrons and visitors at no charge. So staff recommendation is to grant both the license and the easement to Fiberlync to continue with their project.
Discussion among the board or a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we grant Fiberlync a non-exclusive easement and lease agreement at Lynn Park to install, maintain, operate, and repair fiber optic cabling and broadband-related equipment necessary for the transmission and distribution of Fiberlync's broadband and other telecommunication services.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. So with that, we cannot continue until 7 o'clock because we have advertised a public hearing for 7 o'clock. And by statute, you have to have the public hearing when you advertise it. So unless other members of the board would like to discuss something, we will be recessed until 7 p.m. We'll see everyone at 7 p.m. Right.
Started it this afternoon, you can hear it. And then you
I
can vote on it.
heard a very young person in the crowd believing that we need to call the meeting to order. And that makes sense to me. So we will call the meeting back to order, and the next business is a public hearing. Mr. McCrum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we had advertised this evening for a public hearing to discuss and consider an ordinance amendment to Culpeper County Code ordinance in regards to the assessment of real estate devoted to agriculture, horticulture, and forest uses. So specifically what we're looking at here, you can go to the presentation, Siva, is a proposal to repeal or amend, rather, an ordinance that was passed in November of 2017. The primary intent of this ordinance was to allow, or to incentivize the rezoning of agricultural land to industrial, and it would allow the rezoning to stay in the use value tax program, which is a lower tax rate, and it would also withhold any immediate rollback taxes with that rezoning. So the proposal before you would be a change to that ordinance that would request, that would trigger a amendment to that rollback. So properties that are already rezoned to industrial and currently receiving use value taxation would be transitioned out of the program effective January 1, 2027. And then existing properties would move to regular fair market value taxation beginning in 2027. The county would not charge rollback taxes simply because of those properties transitioning out of this program. However, if there is a triggering event on those properties in the future, rollback taxes, that could result in rollback taxes at that point. So to this end, the county assessor has identified 6 parcels that would be impacted by this, by the repeal of this ordinance, and they are noted here. So if we'd like to go into any further detail here, this is the outline of them. I believe Wingspread Properties was one of the first to take advantage of this program. The other 2 were later on in 2023. And then next slide. So projected revenue, if we amended the ordinance, we would see an increase in revenue and roughly $205,000 in tax revenue from removing that use tax value for the properties. So tonight, there will be a public hearing on this matter if anybody has any objections to it, and then the board will consider the proposal. We do have a recommendation from staff that our county attorney can speak to.
This afternoon, we did receive a notice of objection from Wingspread Partners, and based on the information that they put in their letter, just having got it this afternoon, my recommendation would be to hold the public hearing, receive public comment, and then defer on your vote until a time to, the next meeting, perhaps, or when the chairman determines what time, designated time, next meeting or special meeting, to take action then. And that will give me time to review everything and give you my recommendation.
Questions from the board of staff or our attorney? Mr. Bates?
Mr. Chairman, I mean, how long would we be looking to get a good grasp of the legality portion of it before you could get back to the board? How long?
Supervisor Bates, if I could have just a few days or a week, so certainly by our next board meeting, regular board meeting, I would be able to have, we could go into closed session and I could do it that way, or I could send a confidential legal memo with my analysis.
Other questions? Why would it be confidential? Meaning, we're advertising to change a law that, in my opinion, is ending ag subsidies for data center speculators. Why would, if you have an opinion that we're not allowed to do it, or that we can't do it the way we say, and we got to subsidize them, why wouldn't we do that openly?
Well, my analysis would, based on their notice of objection, they were posturing what I interpreted litigation. And so it'd be confidential as far as, as potential litigation.
Well, I could see that if we went ahead and passed it tonight, because then we would be in a position to have litigation. But if it's an opinion prior to us passing something, then it would only be litigation based upon a particular action. So if it's strictly an interpretation of the law, not relative to an action that the board has taken, how would it be in our interest to have that confidential?
It wouldn't have to be confidential then.
Okay, good. Other questions?
I have one question.
Yes.
Ms. Wilson, I guess I'm confused because in 2017, when this was done, Culpeper and only one other jurisdiction decided that that was a great move to allow this to happen. Why would it be an issue to not do it now and match the majority of the state?
Well, again, I just received their notice of objection, and I haven't had time to dig into all of the issues that they raised. My concern is I interpreted their letter to imply that they would seek litigation. And just based off of that, I would want to have time to research, do a proper analysis and like a risk assessment so that I could properly inform the board before you took a vote. That would be my recommendation going forward.
Essentially, we first brought this up in either February or March 3rd at the latest. We're sitting here on May 19th, an afternoon on May 19th, an owner of more than $20 million in assessed value receiving ag land use that happens to be a lawyer himself decides that that's the right time to send the letter? Okay. If there's nothing further, maybe we can open a public hearing. We'll open the public, yes, yeah, go ahead. Super.
I've got a farm in Caroline County that's 45 acres broken into 4 separate parcels. One of those parcels is industrial. The other 3 are not. The county, Caroline, will not allow land use, even though it's being farmed as a whole for that industrial. So I've got to pay market rates on that and always have been for 20 years. I've never seen a county operate like this.
Well, as Supervisor Brown mentioned, we're one of 2, and I have talked to prior members. Things have changed over time, so this is not something about prior boards. Back in 2005, the community openly welcomed leadership of this board flying to Miami to try to get us data centers, and that was a very good idea, and it was supported. In 2017, the board supported trying to get data centers because they thought it was unattractive and that this would help. By 2026, it's certainly, the debate is over the tech zone or other things. I mean, a lot of you all were in campaigns, and in terms of needing to have ag use to entice data centers, that idea may have been historic. So the board may have had a good reason in the past, but you're right, others don't now, and that's probably the reason we advertise this and are sitting here. So, we'll open the public hearing. We have one person signed up thus far to speak on this, Mr. Wayne Toomey.
You know, I didn't know if we was going to be allowed to speak or not, but anyhow, my name is Wayne Toomey. I live in Lignum, actually, Richardsville District. I came to you several times on just concerns and us as citizens trying to work with you guys. I did want to just bring up, I wasn't really prepared for what happened tonight because it's not like a little whirlwind. I just feel like I'm caught in it. I can see frustration just with you guys on the board as the lawyer, and it just puts me in a whirlwind just to try to even come here and explain myself. So, you know, I just want you to bear with me on that. You know, I came to really speak on the Dominion and let you know that we in Richardsville do not want it.
Mr. Toomey, this is only to be spoken
I
of
know,
this.
but what I'm going to say is I understand that totally, and that's what I come prepared for, but I do want to just mention this. It's very confusing when we sit out here and look at you guys not being united. So please help us out. It just looks awful. So I just wanted to if there's anything we can do as citizens, maybe we just need to help more in some way, shape, or form. But I really didn't come prepared to speak on this. I didn't put on there, I'm sorry, Shane, Mr. Crum, I didn't tell you what I was speaking on. But I did just want to get up and voice that. You know, us looking in, it just starts off rough already. So I feel for you.
Thank you, Mr. Toomey. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on ag use valuation for industrial rezoned property? Yes, Ms. Parmalee.
Sarah Parmalee, representing the Piedmont Environmental Council. We support this amendment as proposed since it removes an unnecessary incentive for speculative rezoning of agricultural land. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Are we permitted to ask a question? Yeah, technically, no, ma'am, but you're allowed to speak, and if you express concerns and board members have questions of staff, it could be presented that way, but technically, this is a public forum a public hearing relative to this particular amendment. Seeing no one else, we'll close the public hearing and open it for discussion among staff or a motion, whether a motion to do something now or defer or whatever anyone believes is in order.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I would like to make a motion that the board defers a vote on this proposed amendment of this evening. I think our county attorney has some well-considered points in her letter to us, and I think it might be more prudent for us to let her do a research on this before we take any further action. That's just my opinion. So that's my motion.
We have a motion on the floor for deferral until further information from the county attorney. So I guess, is it appropriate for an uncertain date deferral?
I would recommend, I think if you want to defer it to the next regular meeting, that would be.
Is it okay to defer to the next regular?
Yes, sir. I can add it to I can amend my motion that they deferral until the next regular board meeting. Yes, sir.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Supervisor.
Yep, Mr. Chairman. I mean, I agree 100% that we should eliminate all subsidies to data centers. I campaigned on it, and it needs to be done. I agree with you 100% on this. I do support the amendment, but at the same time, my county attorney has said she needs time to take a look at this. I want to give her the opportunity to take a look at that. I think that would be in the best interest of Culpeper County when my attorney recommends that. But I want everybody to understand that I do not support subsidies for data centers, and we have to get this done, but once our attorney looks at it and gives us the green light.
Supervisor Brown.
And I'll echo that, Supervisor Payne, because that's one of the things we talked about. And when we met with the economic advisor in development, Rothmel, in January, and we found that this was happening, that was why we brought it to the Rules Committee, and that's why, as chairman, I brought it to the board, because it blew my mind that we were doing this. And I mean, truly, maybe in 2017, there was an appropriate attempt. But in 2026, it's not appropriate. So I am with you 100%. I have been since January, because this just kind of fueled me to no end. And, but I will certainly give you the grace of that time, and we can just do maybe a vote in June.
One more. I guess the last question would be is in 30 days. The point is they need to pay their fair share, and if we were to look at this, how much the cost savings over the next 30 days.
It's none. It takes effect in 2027 anyway.
So we have nothing to lose by giving our attorney time to take a hard look at this, and we can do it the right way next month.
Further discussion? Well, for myself, and there are those that are mentioned that we have disagreement, we can politely disagree, and that's fine. I've been on 1-6 votes, probably more than anyone up here, and I think I'm about to be on another. And that's okay. Personally, I've had interactions with the owners of Wingspread, Whit and Otto Stoltz, for many years. This county has worked with them relative to this property in many ways. This was done, as Supervisor Brown mentioned, because of a particular issue. And the particular issue is agricultural valuation for industrial zone property. I feel that we're safe there, so I'll vote one way, but the majority of the board's probably being more prudent, so I get that too, and maybe we're going to be seeing this in June. Are there further comments? If not, all those in favor of Supervisor Lee's motion to defer until our next meeting, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Aye. It passes 6-1. It is deferred. With that, we're almost dead on time. 7:15, the board will hear a presentation from Dominion Energy regarding Fiberlync Joshua Falls-Yeat Substation. I'll turn that to Mr. McCrum first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, as you know, Dominion is here tonight to present to you all on the Joshua Falls to Yeat proposed transmission line project, and it will be followed by a Board of Supervisors Q&A. Thank you. Yeah, you may come up now. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Rob Richardson. I work for Dominion Energy Electric Transmission Group. Lane Carr is my colleague. We both work for the same group out of Richmond, and here to share this presentation. I think there were a few slides before, if you back up. One that had a map with some yellow, there we go, very good. Thank you very much. Let's Let's start with the second slide. Next slide, please. Mr. Chairman, we're going to work through a short presentation here. We know that you have questions for us, so we want to work through this quickly and leave you time, the appropriate time you need for questions for us. We have to plan today for the energy demands we know are coming tomorrow. Power demand in Virginia is expected to nearly double over the next decade. We didn't start planning for this demand with the Joshua Falls-Yeat project. We started nearly 5 years ago in Loudoun County with 3 significant reliability projects, creating a 500 kilovolt loop through Data Center Alley to address potential violations and constraints. Those 3 reliability projects were designed to keep the lights on and to serve large load customers. Next slide, please. The demand for power in Dominion's territory continues to accelerate at a pace that exceeds historical expectations. What you see here are the 2026 PJM DOM zone forecast that show that forecast and show that rising demand. Dominion remains the fastest growing zone in PJM, driven largely by continued data center expansion in Northern Virginia, but certainly also right here. Take a look at the next slide, please. In Culpeper County, we continue to see significant data center demand emerging across the region, as reflected by the number of data center delivery point requests, which we refer to as DPRs. At this point, Culpeper County is asking for a total of 2,400 new megawatts to serve data centers, which reflects a substantial amount of future electric load seeking service within this area. If you break it down by service territory, of which utility will have to provide the requested power, Dominion is requesting 1,200 megawatts by 2032. Within the Rappahannock Electric Cooperative territory, there are 2 projects representing nearly 600 megawatts expected between now and 2032, while an additional 300 megawatt request remains in the queue. The town of Culpeper also has 1 300 megawatt delivery point currently in the queue. Data center growth is no longer concentrated exclusively in Loudoun and Prince William or Fairfax. Demand is expanded outward into surrounding jurisdictions like Culpeper, creating additional pressure on transmission infrastructure, generation planning, and long-term grid reliability. Next slide, please. This slide represents why PJM and utilities are taking a broader, long-term view when planning for future reliability needs. As part of the 2024 open window process, planners evaluated a 5-year case focused on 2029, but also incorporated a sensitivity analysis extending out 8 years. One of the biggest drivers behind reliability concerns is the continued expansion of data center development beyond Northern Virginia. Load growth is no longer isolated in the traditional NOVA corridor. It's spreading into surrounding regions, which creates a more widespread need for transmission upgrades across the broader grid. At the same time, the scale of projected load growth is creating a need for major infrastructure investments to support increased power flows. That includes extra high voltage transmission solutions, expanding multiple utility territories, including AEP, First Energy, and Dominion. Let's take a look at the next slide, please. So let's talk about Fiberlync now. Next slide. I'm sorry, go back one, please. I apologize. There we go. So to address the increasing demand, newer and stronger transmission lines are necessary. The Joshua Falls-Yeat 765 electric transmission line project is part of Fiberlync Transmission project, and the project represents a major step toward continued grid reliability and regional growth. It's a joint venture, I think as most of you know, between Dominion, First Energy, and American Electric Power. It's created to support that long-term grid reliability and combines the experience, expertise, and strength of the 3 member companies. Next slide. So the project proposes construction of an approximately 115-mile transmission line starting in Joshua Falls outside of Lynchburg in Campbell County to the proposed new substation here in Culpeper County. The project was selected through a competitive regional transmission process and approved by PJM, the regional grid operator, which determined the proposal best met the long-term reliability needs. It's a 765 kilovolt is the voltage and approximately 200-foot right-of-way. It's needed in 2029 to be energized. This is a proposed structure, uses 765 transmission lines specifically designed to move large amounts of electricity. The structures are approximately 135 to 160 feet tall. As I mentioned, typical right-of-way, approximately 200 feet. Throughout routing and design, the project team evaluates environmental constraints, ag compatibility, community features, and works closely with landowners and stakeholders to minimize impacts and restore affected areas after construction.
Thanks, Rob. I'm Lane Carr again with Dominion Energy's siting and permitting team and the electric transmission department here supporting Fiberlync and the routing that you've seen in the public open houses and on the public website. Just want to talk a little bit about routing and what goes into that. So when we start the routing process, we cast a very wide net. We have our 2 endpoints, and we compile all of the publicly available data that define some of the constraints that are avoidance features for us: conservation easements, public lands, natural resources, historic resource, cultural resources. We also look at opportunities. Opportunities could be co-locating along existing transmission lines or other linear infrastructure, roads, railroads, pipelines. That's the first thing we really look at, are co-location opportunities. As you know, for this project, the opportunities to co-locate are very minimal. A lot of the transmission lines through this region of the project were developed in the 70s and 80s, back when you could draw a straight transmission corridor because we didn't have the development we see now. Since then, people have built homes, businesses, all along the existing 500 kilovolt corridors in this area. So that's why this project, 115 miles, is mostly greenfield. And so we develop all of our constraints, we look at all of the data available, and then we balance impacts. We go to the public open houses, we talk to the localities. What don't we know? What can you share with us as potential avoidance features? Cemeteries, we've learned a lot from the public open houses. So what I want to emphasize, transmission line routing is not drawing a line from point A to point B and looking to make great impacts. It really is balancing everything you see here: opportunities, constraints. We have to think about constructability. We work very closely with our engineers to make sure the routes we're bringing forward are actually constructible. And of course, we look at cost. So all of those things, what I want to emphasize with this slide is just, it really is a balance. We've got to meet the project goals and the reliability goal here, but we really appreciate community feedback and the regulatory requirements through the SEC process. Next slide, please. So I just want to point out that when we go to the SEC this fall and file our application, this is the code under which we define our proposed route. We have to summarize our efforts to avoid or reasonably minimize, to the greatest extent practicable, impacts to all of these different resources. Additional resources that we take very seriously are residences. We are really trying to minimize distance where we have identified homes. We've learned a lot from people at the open houses who are building new homes. We take all of that into consideration, but we just want to point out that we are subject to the Code of Virginia, and the SEC will evaluate our proposed route with the code you see there. What you see there on the right are the routes that most folks saw if they came to the March open houses or have looked at our website. We are in the process of refining those. New routes will be available probably in the next week or two, later this month, for the public before we go to our next round of open houses in later June. Next slide. So I know the Yeat substation is a hot topic for folks here and want to talk a little bit about that. What you see on that picture there, the purple lines are existing transmission lines through this area in Culpeper County. What you see in yellow are existing 500 kV corridors. What we know about this project, it was approved for its ability to tie in and interject the 765 voltage into an existing 500 kV corridor. So we know that our substation needs to be in close proximity to an existing 500 kV corridor. So when we look to be able to minimize impacts from the original Yeat location, which is up there in the northeast corner of what you see there, bringing it down to the location in Culpeper, reduce the line mileage, thereby reducing cost and minimizing impacts to several resources north of the Rappahannock River, including the need to cross the Rappahannock River. Yeat here in Culpeper, again, we evaluated all properties in proximity to existing 500 kV lines. We're looking for open land that's large enough to accommodate the substation footprint for this project. And we feel that the location here in Culpeper best minimizes impacts to surrounding properties, given the amount of existing buffer on this large site. So I can zoom in a little more on the next slide, please. So about a 450-acre site is what Fiberlync is purchasing. The total development area, approximately 130 acres. The substation footprint itself requires about 85 acres. And then when you think about stormwater and all the other logistics that go into building a substation, looking at about 130 acres. But what you see here, what we like about this site, Elyse Ford Road, is up to the north. This site provides enough space for us to site the substation in the interior of the property, thereby being able to maintain a lot of the existing buffer. Next slide, please. Back to you.
We are committed to community engagement, early and ongoing engagement with residents, with landowners, and local governments. We, in March, completed our first of 2 rounds of open house meetings where we had community open houses in all 9 impacted counties. And we are getting ready to repeat that process in June. June 15th through the 25th will be reserved for open house, in-person open house meetings. Our first community meeting, will be a virtual meeting on June the 10th. The details are on the Fiberlync website, vltransmission.com. We had a lot of good feedback in those meetings, had many good conversations. The routing team, I think, benefited from a better understanding the importance of people's property, the importance of the route to people, and what they valued most, and people shared information with us that allowed us to refine the routes, and that's what we'll bring forward in those June meetings. We expect to have refined routes on the Fiberlync website on GeoVoice. What did we say today? May 27th, I think, is the date, and then the first in-person meetings, May 15th. We will be here. Gosh, I tried to memorize it. I think it's the 16th of. Is it the 25th?
I think it's later in the month.
It's the 25th of June that we will be here, 3:30 to 7:30 in Culpeper to receive comments and feedback. Next slide, please. So this is some feedback that we received during those meetings in March. Limited broadband access in rural communities. We worked with and engaged with libraries in each county to provide resources such as hard copy map books, and we talked to library staff about GeoVoice and how to make GeoVoice work. No confirmation of comments or feedback shared online. We worked with our website provider to provide confirmation receipt. People said we've submitted a question by way of website, but haven't received a response. We've strengthened our team to respond to the more than 2,000 comments. We were expecting a presentation or to have our questions answered at these open house meetings. We opened the doors and we stayed late to accommodate attendees. We think that and have a lot of value. There's a lot of value in people coming to our open house meetings and having one-on-one conversations about their own individual property, which wouldn't be possible if we had a presentation style meeting. Next slide, please. So this is basically the information I just shared with you. Second set of meetings is planned in June. Routes live May 27. We are still planning an application with the Virginia State Corporation Commission this fall, 2026. That begins the SCC process. It does not end the outreach and communication process. The public still has multiple opportunities to engage with the State Corporation Commission even after the project is filed this fall. I think that ends the information. Oh, yeah, I mean, that information, you're welcome to read it, but that's primarily what we wanted to share with you all.
Well, thank you. So at this point, I guess, are you open to taking questions from the board?
Sure, of course, yep.
Probably give Mr. Payne the honor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I have several pages and
Mr. Payne, if we can go through and let others ask too, so that we spread it out a little. I know you'll get through them, but let's not just go.
I got you. Yeah, we can do that. So how many would you like me to ask? 4 or 5? And sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Okay. So I have several pages here from the Stevensburg district, mostly from Richardsville. These questions are coming directly from the residents. So I'll be reading these directly. These are their questions. So first off, what regional need requires this exact transmission line and Yeat substation, and how much of that demand is tied to Northern Virginia data centers?
What I would say is the project was approved by Falls-Yeat, approved by PJM to support not the demand in Northern Virginia, but to support the demand here in this region. When you look at the growing energy.
Yeah, re-emphasize Northern Virginia's already been.
Yeah, so we began building electric transmission infrastructure to support data center development and to resolve constraints and provide reliability in 2022, and we are completing a 22-mile loop, 500 kilovolt, 230 kilovolts through Ashburn that connect to our main 500 corridor, north and south. That 500 corridor connects across the Potomac River into Maryland. The 500 230 loop in Loudon through Ashburn is to support data center development and reliability. PJM approved this project, this extra high voltage 765 project, to tie into Campbell County, which ties into Western Virginia, West Virginia, into Ohio in generation, and to bring generation and bulk electricity into this region, where we are seeing data center development in Culpeper, in Spotsylvania, in Stafford, and Louisa. So, you can't tell the electrons where to stop, and to stop at the county border, where to go. So I can't tell you today that once Yeat is complete, once it's tied into the 500 corridor, that some electrons won't escape Culpeper County and move into Prince William or Loudoun, but they are designed to support the data center development in this region.
Can I do a real quick follow-up on that one? Because that confuses the heck out of me. And what I mean by that is, I believe you said it's 2,457 MW for Culpeper. If you were to, back when you go to your slides of
Yep.
what you said 2457. So what I'm wondering, and that's all that we've approved, including everything in the queue, I believe. And I don't think we have any space, but either way, with what percent of the total amount of power that we transmitted by this line would 2457 represent?
I don't think that I have a number for you and can tell you that data center development happens at different times. We're not planning for this specific data center to come. We don't know exactly when all of those data centers are going to come online. So this is to support not only data center development in this area, but also Rappahannock Electric, the other co-ops here. It also helps with generation retirement from coal facilities in Maryland. I mean, there are a lot of other drivers beyond data center development that Joshua Falls-Yeat is meant to support.
Supervisor.
Not primarily data centers is what I,
So if you, Supervisor Bates, if you.
Just real quick, to follow up on what Supervisor Payne and Underwood brought up. In 2022, we had talked about this technology zone and putting the data centers there, and we had several meetings with Dominion. And it was told to us, we've got a 115 KVA line coming into the town of Culpeper, which would have to be doubled to a 230 KVA. And as Mr. Underwood said, all of our data centers that were in the queue, we've not added any more. And in September of 2025, it was specifically asked to Dominion representatives about this new power line, and nobody knew anything about it. So I can't say that this doesn't really add up, what I'm hearing, that this 765 KVA is essential for us to power the data centers that we've had on the books for 2 to 3 years. Not to mention that in the discussions with Dominion, it was told to us that we would be looking at sometime in 2028. Well, now on this presentation, I'm hearing 2032. So, I mean, the data centers, we've got EdgeCore, Kaiser Farm, and there's a couple others, Copper Ridge. Nothing's been added. So I don't, it just doesn't make sense to me that we're gonna be trying to sell the fact that if we don't put this 765 in, we're not gonna be able to power our data centers. If Northern Virginia needs all this power, tell them to put a power source up there and use that.
Once again, I appreciate that you may have responses, but please, let's get through the questions, and we want more information, please.
Okay, Mr. Chairman. Next question. Dominion states that this project is largely driven by data center growth and identifies approximately 2,435 megawatt of Culpeper data center delivery point requests. Please provide projected load growth supporting this project by category: residential, commercial, industrial, data centers, other large load customers.
I don't have that detail standing here today. That's something that we can pull together for you. I can't provide you that
Well,
today.
and just if you, and if it's okay, Mr. Chairman, any of these questions that I have that may be that you don't have at the moment, any of those, we would love to have information at a later date if you could get them and we could get it back to the residents. So if that's good, I'll move on to the next one. Okay, number 3. Of the approximate 2,435 megawatt of requests, please identify how much represents executive commitments, active applications, conceptual requests, projects without local approvals.
I don't know if I have that. Yeah,
We don't have those specifics.
I don't think we do.
Yeah. But we can get those.
Yep, I don't have those. I don't have the specifics. We can get that.
Understood. Again, anything that I have, if we could just get them in. So, number 4, please identify the total approved, pending, and conceptual data center development currently assumed of planning models supporting, YEAT including associated with electrical demand, and identify how much is driving this project.
Yeah. The Joshua Falls to Yeat project, along with other electric transmission projects that Dominion is working on specifically, are designed to benefit the grid. They're designed to bring bulk electricity into the region. They are designed to meet our energy requirements, which show that the load on our system is going to nearly double by 2035 from 20,000 megawatts to 40,000 megawatts. That's what these projects are for. And so our forecasts show that the key drivers include data centers from Northern Virginia all the way to south side in Mecklenburg County and other places in between. And so these projects are designed to bring in power to support that development. That development also includes many, many more people using electric vehicles, retirement of fossil fuel generation, people in the Northeast adding HVAC units, lots of other concerns, lots of other issues. When you have fossil fuel retirements and generation retirements, it requires more transmission to serve and to bring that load into the region to serve demand. So I can't answer today specific data center questions. I'm sure that there might be a few maybe that are proprietary that we couldn't answer. Every month, our planning department gets requests for delivery points, whether it's from Rappahannock or from CVEC or from Dominion Distribution, Novec, to continue to serve data center development that is occurring today at the rate with which it's been occurring for the last 10 or more years. And so we have a queue process. We work with our distribution colleagues to understand how do we continue to serve that load? How do we continue to serve that demand? If a data center were to say we're going to locate, right down the street, we would have to determine where do we run the distribution line from which substation. If there's not a substation not a substation that has adequate power to serve that 100 megawatts, well, where is that substation that has that extra 100 megawatts? And if it doesn't exist, then we need to build a new substation that would have and be able to accommodate up to 300 megawatts. Well, then we need to find a location to site that substation. And when we say, well, there's nowhere down the street to put a substation, so then what do we do? Well, we look further and further out to put that substation that would serve 300 megawatts, that would serve the data center down the street. And when we put that further out, 3 miles from here, 2 miles from here, 5 miles from here, then we need to run power lines to serve that substation, transmission line to serve that substation, and then distribution line. And so that's sort of how the impact works. We have planning engineers, distribution engineers, CVEC, Rappahannock, Novec all have planning, distribution engineers. We all work together to figure out how to serve that growing capacity. And it's not an easy process to figure out who is coming online first. When a data center says they might need 100 megawatts, well, do they need 100 megawatts when they open their doors, or do they need 20 megawatts when they open their doors? All of that gets figured into the complicated forecasting to figure out how do we serve what 2,400 megawatts do we need? Do we need 100 megawatts here and 20 megawatts over here? Is this data center ramping up to 50 megawatts now in year 2? Are they ramping up faster because they have AI? These are all the questions that our data center team, our planning, our engineers work through every day to figure out that very complicated forecasting mechanism.
I think you've touched on this slightly, but has Dominion classified projected data center demand by facility type, including AI, hyperscale, storage facilities, enterprise, co-locations? If so, please identify and demand assumptions supporting each category.
Not to my knowledge, but I'm happy to ask the folks who would know definitively.
Okay. Keeping it moving. How much projected load growth depends on facilities not yet approved by Culpeper County?
So ask the question one more time, I'm sorry.
I know it's tricky. How much projected load growth depends on facilities not yet approved by Culpeper County?
I don't know the answer to that.
I got you.
Yep. Nope.
Okay.
Not yet approved
Yeah.
by Culpeper County.
Okay. So
Yep.
Just be specific so that they can answer. So what you're asking is.
If they're not approved.
I'm assuming
Right,
that,
but projected load growth. So you have projected load growth that's approved, and you have projected load growth that's not approved.
that you foresee.
That you foresee. And you
Yes.
can foresee some portion in various regions and maybe down to localities. I don't know, but however close you get to seeing what portion is Culpeper, the question is, what is the projected load growth that's not yet approved, what's Culpeper's portion?
Right.
And
That's-
my guess is minuscule to negligible, but that's just, I don't know.
Yeah, and that's a good question. We have a whole, like Rob mentioned, a whole planning department who looks at a lot of these questions you're asking and are the best party that we can provide better responses for you after.
Yes, and I understand if a lot of these are ones that you can just circle back. So, okay, if these proposed projects are not ultimately built, is Yeat still required at this size, at this location, on this timeline?
So if the transmission line is not built,
So, yeah, I'm assuming that it means, the question, the last question was foreseeing in the future, basically approved, future approved, if there were, is a forecast. And if nothing is, if that forecast, what is needed to support that forecast? That's the question here. Is Yeat the size, the location, and the time frame? If those projects are there, if they're not
so the
foreseen.
Yeat substation is specific to the 765 project.
Yeah.
It's needed to support that project and
Yes.
interject that voltage into the existing infrastructure.
Yes. So, yeah, so that's what I'm seeing.
I
from-
think what that may be asking, and if you don't mind, I can
Yes,
try to.
please
I
help.
think what that may be asking is what portion of that's already approved, what portion is projected, and if the projected doesn't come to fruition,
Yeah.
is the 765 kV line needed? I think that's the question.
Yeah, do we need this without that future projection? That's what I'm.
Now, I got a different opinion of that, but I want them to
Okay,
answer.
Okay.
I think so the way I would interpret that question is if, for instance, there was a moratorium on data center development today, would the project still be needed, something along those lines? And
Exactly,
I guess I would
yes.
say that the Yeat, the Joshua Falls Yeat, and the other projects that have been approved by PJM would still be needed if no more data centers came into the queue or applied for permits to build in the Commonwealth or build in this area. Those are needed, yes, to meet current demand, to also meet future demand, forecasted demand, and would be needed if all of a sudden the Commonwealth said we're going to stop building data centers.
So while we're on that same note, next question is very similar. Is this project addressing existing reliability needs or enabling future regional growth and expansion?
This is reliability. This is not a delivery point request. This is to meet the reliability of the Commonwealth, the reliability of the grid, the reliability in PJM. So it's not meant to only serve the Commonwealth of Virginia. The grid is interconnected, as you all know, and connected to our neighbors in West Virginia, our neighbors in Maryland. And so part of that need addresses reliability in the PJM region as well.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
could I,
go ahead, please.
Okay. If we could go back to slide 13, please. Mr. Payne, if you don't mind, I wanted to have a
Oh,
couple
yes,
questions
let's spread it out
here.
whenever you all want
Thank you.
to.
I need a break.
Oh, there we go. All right, I have a question is it Lane?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. It's 450 acres. The actual substation would be, is it 100 acres, 127 acres?
The footprint, you need about 85 acres for the footprint of the
The actual substation? Okay, all right. And so I think my question is more related to alternatives to that particular site. And we all understand that there's a great demand for electricity everywhere. It's data center driven, but I think it's also, just the way our society lives now, right? And we're hearing terrific information from you guys concerning data center growth and, megawatts but in all honesty, I think what's missing is we're not having a discussion about the human impact of this particular site. And the human impact is in this room. And the folks that live in the Richardsville area, obviously they're here and they are terrified. You know, they are terrified that if this goes through, everything's going to change in their world, right? And so my question is, given the fact, and I understand that you all work to minimize the human impact, got that, okay? It's a really, really difficult job, excuse me, that you all have. But nonetheless, the human impact is real, and they're all here right now. So my question is, do we have alternatives to this particular site? If we were to say to you today as a board, no, we do not want the substation in the site, because we have heard,
Now, guys, once again,
because,
let him finish his question.
Thank
It's a
you.
long-winded one.
oh, I'm sorry, Mr.
No,
Chairman.
keep going, but it's a long question.
Because we are listening to our constituents, and this is, even given the fact that we have such a great demand for electricity, we don't want it in our backyard, okay? We don't want it in the backyard of our citizens in the Richardsville area. So the question is then do we have alternatives? Are there other locations that Dominion can look at? Are there other ways of bringing the electricity? I've only heard briefly discussions about underground and things like that. And I'll get to the end of my question, Mr. Chairman. So my question is simply, what are the alternatives, given the fact that we know that this will, in fact, have a fairly large, if it goes through, impact on this area? And again, the human impact is right here with us.
Sure.
So,
Understand these types of projects have a lot of local opposition. We're used to that. At this point, we do not have an alternative. We are very early in the process of working with Culpeper County, and we plan to continue that and to meet the requirements, the legal and zoning and permitting requirements of Culpeper. But we're so early. We've just really begun, but we do not have an alternative location. No, we believe this site, with the amount of existing buffer that we could maintain, is a really good site compared to other possibilities that we looked at that just don't
okay.
have
So,
the same
so
opportunity.
so this is an ideal site, okay, understood, but there are possibilities for other locations, possibly in other counties, correct?
At this point, no, this is our primary site.
Right, but
don't
I'm
have
saying
any
if there is enough vocal opposition or government opposition to this, Dominion can find other alternatives, is that correct?
We will go through the process. Yes, we're very early. This is our primary site. We don't have any alternatives at this point, but we look forward to going through the process, which we're used to going through, and in several localities throughout Virginia. That's very common for us.
Yeah, okay, all right,
Yep.
thank you.
Someone other than Mr. Payne, real quick. Supervisor Neal, you've not spoke yet. Yes, sir.
Just, isn't the future underground, though? I mean, that's what I don't understand. I mean, from a feasibility standpoint, it's almost like building a road or an interstate, building 2 lanes, when 10, 20 years down the road, you need 5 or 6 or more. Why put it above ground now, and then in the future, when underground is needed from an environmental standpoint, et cetera, you're going to have to relocate that. Can you expound on that?
Undergrounding.
The future may be underground electric transmission, but it's not today. There's one underground 500 kilovolt line that exists in the United States. It's in Chino Hills, California. It's about 3 miles long. The ampacity, and don't mistake me for an engineer, the ampacity, the amount of electricity that it goes through that 3 mile long underground 500 line is not nearly as much energy as you can put through an overhead 500 kilovolt line. So there's one in the United States. The Joshua Falls-Yeat is a 765 kilovolt electric transmission line. Nowhere in the United States, nowhere in the world, has anybody put a 765 kilovolt transmission line underground. So for this project that's needed by 2029, the plan is to build overhead electric transmission connecting Joshua Falls to the Yeat substation. We have underground 230 kilovolt lines. We have some underground 115 kilovolt lines. We have underground distribution. We've been very successful in undergrounding distribution lines to your house, not yours specifically, of course, but to residential homes and minimizing storm response and storm restoration. The technology just isn't there yet for putting these large, extra large, high voltage transmission lines underground. They also carry a very significant impact when you do underground transmission lines. Short answer to your question is the technology is just not there yet for us to consider something like this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You want to add?
I would just add undergrounding, it takes away the visual impacts, and I understand that. I understand why that's a popular option for everybody in this room, right? When you talk about environmental impacts, when you place permanent fill or those structures in those concrete duct banks underground, say 10 to 15 feet at a 50-foot wide right-of-way, again, those are permanent impacts to any wetland habitat. It can shift the natural groundwater flow and create flooding somewhere downstream, where you're creating kind of a dam underground of that existing groundwater table. So there are environmental impacts with undergrounding also. Just add that. And then when you think about, we may get into a conversation about easements and real estate, but when we acquire easements across, say, farmland for an overhead transmission line, that land is still usable. You can still farm. We've got lots of examples across Virginia, across agricultural land. When you place an underground duct bank across, say, farmland, that area really is completely unusable because of that underground infrastructure. There's a lot of constraints typically in VDOT right-of-ways, houses and businesses, and
Is it constraints or is it cost?
it's both. Cost is definitely a factor in undergrounding, even for when we talk about undergrounding 230 kV lines. Cost is a big factor.
Cost is not the first,
Yeah.
the first thing that Dominion looks at when looking at building high voltage power lines. It is the first thing that the State Corporation Commission considers, because these costs are shared amongst our ratepayers. And so, you know, when you're talking about for a 500 line, an estimate of 7 to 10 times greater expense to put something like that underground, it's real money that you're talking about.
So back to Supervisor Lee's comment about human impact. So cost is more important than human impact.
No, not at all. Nope, didn't say that at all.
Well, Mr. Chairman, the comment I want to make, I'm not trying to create an applause or anything of that nature, but I'm just trying to figure this out. And when we talk about power generation, so we're taking a line, it's coming out of Lynchburg, that power is being supplied by the Ohio Valley. That line's going across the Appalachian Mountains, going to Campbell County, hooking up, and it's going to be going up to Northern Virginia. I get it. But with Dominion, didn't you all just merge with NextEra Energy? Did the merger go through with Dominion?
It was announced, it's a 18 to 24 month process before that's approved. Yeah.
Which that was done because of power generation to combine the resources, which would be the largest power company in the world, from what I've understood, to supply power to these AI data centers. Why would we not consider putting gas-fired plants in Northern Virginia or whatever, where you don't have to run all these lines, where you can kind of have segregated power sources? And if NextEra is out of New York, I don't know how all this works. And I'm not trying, like you said previously, I'm not an engineer, but I do have a little bit of common sense. And I think that it's a good idea, versus destroying these people's homes and property and such, that we start looking at, maybe, as Supervisor Deal said, run this thing. I heard rumor that it might run up 95 if you need to do that. But if you could, you know, have the state legislators approve where you're putting gas-powered plants up north where the end users need it, and not running them through rural Virginia. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me to go from Lynchburg all the way to Ashburn, and everybody in between has got to suffer for what's going on up in Northern Virginia. So again, I'm not trying to.
Please, let's hear the response as opposed to, yeah.
What I would say is that, Dominion, every year produces a report that looks at, future generation needs 5, 10, 15 years out. I haven't looked at that document in a while to tell you what it contains, but I know that it contains gas-fired generation. I know that we're looking at small modular reactors in the development of those as well, sort of all of the above technology with offshore wind and with solar. I'm not part of the team that looks at where we're going to site those facilities, so I can't provide any insight into building generation in Northern Virginia. I just don't. I'm not part of that group that considers that. But I know that we're looking at all the above, and that we know that we need to build new generation and are working towards that.
I had one that piggybacks on that. Piggyback, okay. All right, if Northern Virginia's load growth is the primary driver, why are rural communities hosting 115 miles of new infrastructure rather than maximizing upgrades within existing corridors and growth areas? Similar.
So I'm mostly familiar with Northern Virginia, but we've got a number of projects around here as well where we're proposing to do some wrecking and rebuilding of existing infrastructure. There's the Morrisville to Wishing Star electric transmission line project that stays mostly in this existing 500 corridor that goes north to south. I know that the WNOD trail, maybe some of you are familiar with, we reconductored, we put new wires up to run more power down that corridor. We have reconductored. We have added, uprated from 115 kV to a 230 kV, about all of the transmission lines in Northern Virginia where we could do that, because it's one of the quickest things we can do, because it doesn't always require regulatory approval or a 2 or 4 year process. So we've been working on that since before 2022, looking at other technologies to sort of wring all of the electrons out of those existing infrastructure. We've been working very hard to do that. So it's a great suggestion. We've been doing it, and we'll continue to look for other areas where we can continue to do that.
And yeah, just to reiterate, you started that question with if Northern Virginia data centers are the primary driver for this project. Like Rob mentioned before, in the 2022 PJM open window, those are the projects we're building now to solve specifically what PJM identified as the Northern Virginia kind of data center load growth issue, the 500 kV loop and the Morrisville to Wishing Star. So those projects are being built now and going through the permitting process to solve what PJM identified in 2022 due to the Northern Virginia growth in data centers.
Essentially, you all are, PJM identifies needs, and then you all figure out how to deliver the power where the need is. And along those lines, is the need greater now, meaning the electricity growth, not meaning whether people want to use it, but fundamentally, is the growth in the rate of electricity usage per capita growing faster now than it has historically?
Probably go back to that second slide with
This one here.
that slide there.
Because the answer is it is. I mean, the reason I say it, whether we want it to or not, it is. And it's not, it's not just because of our electric cars, but go ahead, yeah.
Well, I mean, you can read this. Dominion remains the fastest growing PJM zone out of 13 states, 65 million customers. 2026 forecast shows year-over-year growth. 8 out of our 10 peak days have occurred in 2026. 8 out of 9 peak days in 2029.
Now, with that, let's figure that this is largely because of data centers. We can say it isn't, but it is. I spend a lot of money on data centers. I'm a co-founder of an AI company where I pay data centers a heck of a lot of money. That's true. But with that, what I'm wondering is, has PJM found a need for a line and that line not been built? Can you give me an example of that?
I can't.
I can't either. They're looking 5
I
years out.
asked AI, and I've not seen an example of that ever occurring. So the reason I'm bringing this up is not to say I want the line, because I don't. This county joined the other counties to intervene at the SEC. We don't want the line if it's possible to not have the line, and we've been clear about that. On the other hand, if the line will be built, meaning if every time PJM has said there's a line, SEC's approved the line, and the line gets built, we can either have that as a fact and deal with it while working through this or not. So that's why I'm asking the question, has there been a case where PJM said, yep, it's needed, and it didn't happen? Now, we may be the first,
Yeah.
but in the history of electricity, we may be the first.
Yeah, I'm not aware of.
Okay, thanks. Mr. Payne.
Okay, this is very consistent with what you just spoke of. Who receives the primary reliability benefit from this project? I believe you've answered that already. But,
The DOM zone.
okay, all right, okay. So, moving on, the project site totals approximately 448 acres, with approximately 127 acres planned for development. What future infrastructure could the remaining acreage support? Would the approval of the Yeat increase the likelihood of additional transmission lines, future substations, additional interconnections, additional industry energy infrastructure?
So at this time, what we know is 765 has got to come to an endpoint at Yeat, it's the proposed location currently. We do know that that has to be interjected into our existing 500 kV system. So if you want to pull up one of the aerial images. Go further to the Yeat. Yeah, you could probably even go down one more for a little more. Yep, zoomed in. So on the right-hand side of that picture, you see that existing cleared right-of-way. The Yeat substation footprint would be interior to the central portion of the polygon in yellow. There would be a future project to connect to that with a 500 kilovolt transmission line, connect to that existing 500 kV corridor that you see there on the right. And that's another reason this site was a good site in our opinion, because I think the distance from where the substation would be interior to that parcel, it's not, I don't know the distance off the top of my head, but it's not like we have to go several miles to connect to another 500 kilovolt existing line for this project.
Understood.
So that also, when we were, we're looking at potential sites, all the potential sites, any alternative sites would have had to be north of where we are now. So that would have increased transmission lines through Culpeper and additional impacts. But again, this just proved to be the best possible site for us
But,
for part of that reason.
Mr. Chairman, again, if I could dispute what you're saying, Lane, I think what I continue to hear is, and you just said this, that Valley-Link has to come to an end at Yeat. I just reject that premise. It does not have to come to an end in this particular location. It might be preferred for Dominion for it to end there, but to say it has to stop right there, well, we're just putting blinders on. We're not looking again at any other alternatives. And I will respectfully say this to you, and I say respectfully because our citizens do not feel like they are being respected by you all. And I've heard that from them over and over again, and they do not feel like they're being listened to. And so I would respectfully ask of you all to please look at other alternatives. Please don't come back and say, it has to end right here. Please come back and say, we heard you, we've looked at other options, these are the other options. I don't feel like we're having a dialogue about this. I feel like it's a done deal, and I don't think that that's in any way, shape, or form the right way for us to all work together to do the right thing. And we're not doing the right thing if we're not looking at different alternatives.
Sure, I appreciate that. Well, like I mentioned before, we are trying to reduce line mileage to the maximum extent practicable, and that's why we reduced going to the original location. Any alternative location would have to be north of here to one of those existing 500 kV lines, which would increase the cost of the project and thereby increasing the line mileage and naturally increasing impacts to people.
Well, yes, that can increase impacts, but again, in all honesty, I'm most concerned about this impact
Sure.
right here.
Understood.
This human impact for these folks in this room right now. So, and Supervisor Deal made a great point. Dominion's a huge company with tremendous resources. There have to be alternatives. There have to be other things that we can do for this project, other avenues for us to look at. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Just a quick question, does this line have anything to do, because I know the governor last year announced that the Commonwealth was going to be one of the first places in the United States with an active SMR. And if I'm not mistaken, that has already begun at North Anna Nuclear Plant, that they've already started the process with this SMR. So does this line, would they be tying into this Yeats line, or the Joshua Falls line from North Anna? Would those two tie together or no?
No, I think that, so let me just correct. I think Dominion has announced plans to develop an SMR at North Anna, but there's been no construction. There's been no announcement of energization or anything like that. So I can't tell you that something like that is in the works currently. Dominion is certainly interested in SMR development. We have a companion project, North Anna to Bristers, that would connect to a substation at North Anna Power Station in Louisa County and through Spotsylvania, Caroline, up through Stafford, and then into Fauquier. That project would be able to transport any energy from an SMR that's developed at North Anna Power Station and put that power onto the grid.
Mr. Chairman, I got a question that piggybacks back to the beginning. Approximately a year and a half, maybe 2 years, I've sat in this room and listened to Dominion present to this board numerous times about how they were going to get the power to our data centers and the timeframes that have stretched out and out. If I remember correctly, that had to do with a line that was coming from Gordonsville, coming up this way, and if I'm right with some of the pieces that we're putting together, is probably the 2199 line that is looking at having an upgrade from Remington to Gordonsville, and that was going to be what was going to feed our data centers. Are y'all saying that you're abandoning all of those projects to do this one, or are we also going to have those in addition to these?
Yeah, he's outside still, I think. We're not announcing any abandonment of any projects. I know you've got, I was just looking for my notes here. I know you've got the Culpeper Tech Zone that's been approved and some other substations that have been approved with that. And all of those projects, I mean, there've been some delays, if my memory serves correctly, on some of those delivery point request substations, but we've not paused on anything.
Well, it just strikes me a little bit odd when you talk about this line and you're showing the benefits to all of our data centers, even the ones in queue,
Yeah.
but yet that should be coming off the 2199 line. So Which is it?
Those were just made to signify that the load growth is
I mean,
happening.
respectfully, it's just, I'm just trying to get it all sorted in my head. I mean, I'm just, we've been told a lot, so trying to decipher it.
I'm not sure we're talking about apples to apples, but,
Well, we're talking about getting power to our data centers,
yeah, yeah.
A or B.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Is it coming off of the new line you're doing, or off of the
All of the
2199?
above, all of the above. The power is needed from both projects.
Okay, so then that goes back to a little research I've been doing for months now, too, and President Trump mentioned last month, it was a statement, a declaration, it was a 303, and our failure in our infrastructure and how poor Virginia is. Our governor has then did a statement a week or so ago, and we're in the same boat. So is that where the PJM is trying to comply with our federal and our state governments and fix our infrastructure problem? Or is that totally different? Or how does that bear on what y'all are putting in front of us today?
So my understanding of that executive order, I think it was 2025, was really related to, yes, identifying the demand is real. We need to solve what
It
we
was
know is
April
coming. We need to
20th,
work hard with that.
2026, another.
Okay. And I think it's mostly surrounded by supply chain, being sure that for these projects that all the different utilities need to build,
Okay.
we can get our materials in good time. I forgot the first part of your question. Oh, is PJM looking at the federal executive orders? PJM is evaluating the grid within the 13 states, including Washington, D.C. It serves 67 million customers. They are constantly, I mean, I can't even imagine what it must look like up there in Pennsylvania and what they monitor every minute of every day to be making these projections and coming to the utilities to help solve
And
what
that
they're seeing.
piggybacks to what you were saying, Mr. Chairman, that is one of my concerns, is if we're going to have to deal with that 303 statement, and then we go into, do we have an option? The other thing that I know Mr. Payne has talked about, and some of the people have, you guys talk about the easements, and yes, you can still farm under them. That easement is huge, it's big, it goes through. And you would obviously reimburse or purchase those easements from the landowners. To me, and in my world, that easement value is nothing compared to the property value and what that site value will do. And how are you going to compensate if this goes to that level? And that's a huge if, and I'm not saying, but I want to help these people prepare longer down the road. If we go that direction, how are you going to help with their property value loss, which is real, and it's not going to be just that 200 foot, because you're talking vision, and any of them that it impedes their sale or their ability to sell later, how are you going to handle that? Should they get appraisals now so that they can prove to you where it is now compared to where it is once you come?
Folks are certainly welcome to do that. Let me tell you how we handle this process and how Valley Link will handle it. Once we have a final, what we think is a final route, and we could send out, potentially send out letters, route inspection, authorization letters, at some point as we get close to the SCC application date, requesting access for survey, and if folks say no, that's fine. But once we have a route that the SCC has approved, which we think could be, fall of 2027, then we would begin requesting surveys for the purpose of surveying, creating plats, understanding the amount of property, the amount of the easement that we would need. So what the right-of-way width, 200 feet by however many feet on someone's property. We would determine what the fair market value of that easement would be. We would present that to the property owner, and typically the property owner says no to that first offer, and then we would begin negotiation on what fair market value is. That's the way we would
Well, and I
handle
think
that.
that's the key thing, is it's not just that 200-foot easement that is that's affecting this property, or their value, or their neighbor's value. So I think that's something that we have to look at. The next thing is protection. Obviously, we know, the first thing we do is we go after another country's power grid. So what are we going to do to protect the residents down there when we have a big substation there? What is y'all's goal in helping that protection of our citizens?
We take security very seriously. We have a whole cybersecurity team. They are constantly, there are our substations. We have anti-climb fences. You cannot enter that substation property without somebody knowing,
Okay.
alert, go now, stop. Yeah, I can't share the details, but I can assure you that security around our substations is taken very seriously. We have a whole team of people. On every substation project we bring forth in whatever locality it is, we employ a lot of different project team members, and a big part of every project is our substation security team.
Supervisor Payne?
I've,
Oh, sorry. Sorry, Supervisor Fairshad, folks.
Well, I think the most pertinent question that's been asked tonight was the question I wasn't going to ask, but that you actually beat me to it, is had PJM ever denied a project that was in play? And this is more of a statement. I feel like the Indians must have felt back in the late 1800s, where we're all the Indians, and PJM and the State Corporation Commission are the government. And these meetings are peace meetings and potential treaties, but none of it comes to fruition. If PJM has never, ever, ever rescinded one of these projects in the history of them, then why are we all here? Honestly, because it's still going to come through, no matter what. And I think that you're required to have these community meetings to probably take the heat off the SEC, because you're going to come through with it. And it just seems like we're wasting a lot of people's times over something that is unfortunately, tragically coming in, whether we like it or not. And if it's for the greater good, however it gets dressed, I understand that. I don't want it in this county. None of us do. But that to me, if we're going to consolidate this into, instead of all the questions, are you coming through or not? Are you coming through or not? And based on history, you're coming through. There's just no two ways about it. I'm just calling it the way I see it. And I'd like an answer to that, if possible, based on the history of your government, Dominion, PJM, SEC.
That's phrased more constructively. Is there any way we could stop it coming through?
I don't think so.
Well, that's what I would ask them.
But the SEC, if every county involved voted it down, no approval, no rezoning, no nothing, can't the SEC trump that and still come through? Because I was told it would, and could, and will.
The SCC currently only has jurisdiction over the transmission line. They do not trump local zoning of the localities.
And the Fed?
This project, yeah, the line project is up to the SCC approving. We have to prove the need, which I think we can do. I think Fiberlync can prove the need. I think it's there. We also have to prove that the proposed route we bring forward to the SCC, like I showed in the state code, minimizes impacts to the extent practicable to all of those different resources. And ultimately, to build the line is the decision of the SCC. We are not required to do community outreach through our SCC process. That's something that Dominion Energy and Fiberlync choose to do. Believe it or not, we do like to talk to people and hear your input. I've met a lot of people at these open houses. I've had great conversations. I've had really tough conversations. I'm not here to tell you this is not an impactful project. I don't debate that at all. But ultimately, it is up to the approval of the SCC. No, only the transmission line.
So,
I-
go ahead.
I actually had my own question for once here. So I just need clarification. You said that that you would not trump local, our local decision,
The SCC.
but then you followed up and said that you believe there is a need and the SCC is the final decision. So isn't that a contradiction?
Let me.
Yeah, go ahead.
The two-step regulatory process starts with PJM. PJM says, you know, we think that there's a need for Joshua Falls-Yeat. Our planners, other planners across the country look to see if they can meet that need, and the project is then awarded to the best project. PJM awarded this to Fiberlync, a joint venture between Dominion, AEP, and First Energy. So we are working toward that first step has been met. PJM, through a competitive process, Dominion Fiberlync has won that project through a competitive process from PJM to build Joshua Falls to Yeat. The second regulatory process is then to go through the State Corporation Commission process when Fiberlync would submit an application for what they call a CPCN, a Certificate for Public Convenience and Necessity. That process takes about 12 months or so, and it's much like a court process. The SCC has a public staff. The SCC has 3 judges. There's a hearing. The hearing could last, for a project of this magnitude, could last 3 or 4 weeks or more than a month, while witnesses are called and Fiberlync presents evidence. Attorneys representing counties perhaps question our witnesses, and we go back and forth, and it's a court-like process with information provided on both sides. At some point then, that process ends, and the State Corporation Commission and the 3 judges would then make a final determination about the project, the route that Fiberlync can build. They would look at all of our study. They would look at both of the corridors and the variations that we've studied, and we will in the fall have a preferred route that we think is better than all the other routes because it minimizes impacts to the greatest extent possible. So we're going to have a preferred route when we file this fall. The SCC then looks at that. They can choose that route and say that route makes the most sense to us. The State Corporation Commission says, we don't think that route makes the most sense. We think that this route makes the most sense, or a combination of the State Corporation Commission has a lot of things they can do. They would likely also, as they have done with other Dominion projects, have local public hearings. They may come up to Culpeper. They may go to Orange. They may go to Louisa and have a process like this where the public is invited to come up and speak to the State Corporation Commission and express their views. After all of that's done, a roughly 12-month process, State Corporation Commission issues a ruling and says, Fiberlync, you can build Route X. At that point, we have an official route, we have a ruling, and that's when we would then begin the process of permitting. We would begin the process of acquiring easements and all of the other things that need to happen before construction of that project begins.
And I appreciate you. I appreciate you describing the process to me. It's very helpful. But back to the statement of that this decision wouldn't trump our local decision. So if we deny the substation,
Sure.
if we deny the substation, you're saying still after we deny it locally, we make our local decision that we do not want the substation in Culpeper County. At that point, you still continue to go through that process. And ultimately, at the end of the day, you're saying the SCC would basically overrule our decision.
In many other cases, we might not seek a conditional use permit for a newly proposed substation until we have an approved electric transmission line from the State Corporation Commission. So we've done that in many cases. We wait till the SCC says we approve this, and then we have to go and work on the conditional use permits for substations. So in Loudoun County, it was Aspen to Golden, or Golden to Mars, or Wishing Star to Mars. The SEC approves a route, then we go and we begin working with Loudoun County Planning on the conditional use permits for those substations. That's often the way we do that in these cases.
To piggyback on that, so you're saying that the transmission line route would be approved first before the substation, but if this board does not approve the substation application, would the transmission line, the preferred transmission line, be modified, the route be modified to a different location, to a different route, if this board did not approve the substation application?
I understand the question. I mean, I think it's, I think that we, Lane and I, our colleagues at Dominion, our colleagues at Fiberlync, remain hopeful that we can continue to work with Culpeper County.
Please let him answer.
The project will be filed in the fall of 2026. And we will continue to work on the routing and siting of the Yeat substation in Culpeper County.
Yeah. We don't know.
Supervisor
To
Bates.
simplify this, when we voted on the resolution, it was a 6-1 vote. Supervisor Underwood voted, he was on the dissenting side, and his comments were, based off of what you just described to me, that the SCC will approve X, Y, or ABC, this is the line you get. And at that point, then you would move forward with a conditional use permit for the Yeats, for the substation. Culpeper County says, we don't want it. At that point, would you have to go back to the SCC to carry that line all the way through Richardsville to the next county, or whatever county would accept that conditional use permit? Or is it a situation that, well, it looks good on paper that you all put up a good fight, but you're going to get a substation? Which is it?
If we have an approved line from the SCC, we would, and the locality did not approve the substation, we would not likely go back and restart the process and submit a new routing project.
What
We
would you
would-
do at that point? Would the line then continue through the county at your own, or
No.
would you hop over to the, what is it, a 530, a 530 KVA easement you've already got? Would you hop over there and put the substation somewhere else?
No.
There would be a new precedent
Wait.
set, and that's what they're not willing to say. No, that's not
No.
quite the question.
I'm getting really confused here.
We would, yeah, we would continue, we are here to work as closely with Culpeper as we can and listen to your people. We will have open houses as part of the conditional use permit process. We want to hear those people.
No.
I know.
Please,
I know that.
audience.
It's
But I-
important to us to listen to
And
them.
I'll move,
If we were in a situation where we had an approved line and the locality was not willing to work with us, even if we meet all of the local requirements under the zoning, and it was still not approved, we would probably look to maybe change that precedent. And get the
So-
SEC back and more involved, and would they then take authority over the substations, which they used to have?
So I appreciate that. I'm not trying to,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I'm a simple guy who likes simple answers. And so your answer to that is yes. My original question, the answer is if we deny the substation, you have the ability to supersede us and to still continue with the line as you're proposing now.
We don't have that ability now to supersede.
You don't.
No.
It would
We
be a new
We would probably research what that might look like.
So if, for instance, we didn't want it, but you could make a deal with like Spotsylvania County, so you would move it further south, then that would call for a modification and a transition of the line, correct? Where it would go a different route potentially?
If I could maybe ask just a clarifying question. So essentially, before the line is set, you want to work with the county. After the line is set, wherever it ends, is where you want to work as best you can to get it to end, but even if the county doesn't agree, you have to pursue whatever you can reasonably to get it to end there if possible. Would that be a reasonable way of saying what you're saying?
Sure.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I think that I think that we will probably have a reasonable idea in the next 8 or 9 months, maybe the next 12 months, about whether or not we will be able to work with Culpeper County in this capacity or not, which would fall within that 12-month time frame where we were working with the State Corporation Commission. And so if we determined that there was an impasse that was too great to overcome, then at some point we might begin to look at alternatives or look at what else we can do to find a solution to land Joshua Falls to Yeat, if that were the case. But we remain committed to working with you and talking with you in Culpeper County because we think it's a good location for the substation.
I think that's an important answer. Do you want to follow up on that or have me?
Yeah, I'm also just curious to the failure rate of SCC, the approval rate. How often are these lines actually approved by the SCC?
I've never been involved with a case that wasn't approved.
Me neither.
There was a project, the Altair project.
I'm sorry, you said you'd never been involved
A
in?
project that was not approved.
They all are approved?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, my question would be, if this, for whatever reason, over the next 8 to 9 months, we were not working well, would the next place that you would likely look be more likely north or south or east or west?
North.
Of course. So if it's not, if we either work well and it's where it is. Now, I said this before and you all, the room, I was not very well received. But I was not saying it because I wanted to do something wrong. What I was saying was that the line can stop at a point where there's a substation, and there is proof. There's like maps of where the 500 kV line, it doesn't go into Culpeper. We can complain it doesn't go in, or we can say it doesn't go in. But it doesn't go in. It goes over to the 500 kV line that's going to be, let's just say, bulked up in some ways, and it's going to go north. Now, that will tie into a loop, that we have another line that comes down, so you can argue that it still comes back to us if you want to. But with that, if we don't do this, in my opinion, it goes north. Why do I think that? Because before they put it here, it went north. They're saying it's here because it's less impact than if it goes north. So if we don't work, we will learn more, and we have time to learn, but the odds are pretty tremendous that it's going straight through. And you can shoot the messenger, and maybe they're going to say that's not the case, but that's my interpretation.
That's irrespective of substation or not.
That's right.
Once the substation's in, it's still going to end up going.
No, it isn't. It's going to cut over to the 500 kV. It's
goes north
literally
south.
the 500 kV goes through the same parcel. So if it stops here, it doesn't still go north through the county. It actually stops the next component of the line, and it cuts straight over to the 500 kV.
Why can't it cut straight over to the 500 without the substation?
Because look at the map and look at where Yeat is and look at where they're trying to get on that hanging basket or whatever you want to call it. Essentially, what they can do is get to the 500 and go up there, or they can go further north, which frankly, I got a feeling if they're being honest to their opinion, for pure economics, the further north they go, the better it is for them. Pure economics, not impact. Are you better off heading north? Is that, I mean, not worrying about the people in the room. Are you better off heading north out of pure looking at it from an electric grid reliability, deliverability standpoint? I think I know the answer.
Yeah, I mean, that's where we look to our planners to determine which 500 kV corridor represents an electrically viable solution. It's not every single 500 kV corridor. There's a lot that goes on to determine that. But you mentioned, why can't you just tie into the 500 without the substation? So at the 765 voltage coming in, you've got to step that down, and that's the reason for the substation with the transformers, to step it down to the 500 kV to be able to tie it into the existing grid.
That's right.
You wouldn't, without the substation, you won't be able to tie into the 500, but you will just continue the 765 north. So so pretend Yeat doesn't exist. You're just going to go right through Yeat and keep going north with that 765. So Richardsville, Lignum, Richardsville, that area potentially could have 765, another, 3 to 7 miles?
If the substation were located north of its current proposed
either the
location.
So basically, the bottom line is, it's either a substation or it's more 765s going through
Right now,
our county.
you've got 3 miles into the
Correct.
county to the substation. Without the substation, then they're going to continue on another 6 miles
North.
of the same 765. So substation, 3 miles. No substation, the full 9-mile run through the county.
I think we would have to look at what that routing would look like if it was no longer routed toward Yeat. Then we would have to look at Culpeper County. We wouldn't just automatically assume that we would be routing towards Yeat, even though Yeat was no longer there. We would have to look at what makes sense, but based on another location.
In other words, it could go through more of the county going slightly west. Because if you look at the points and where they're trying to get to. Now, that said, we're doing all we can to stop the line. And Ms. Supervisor Payne.
Okay, I'm trying to summarize a few, Thank you. Okay, I have numerous questions here, mostly on impacts. And I'm trying to summarize a few of them. And so if you, mostly it's the concern has Dominion, basically they're asking, have you done your homework when it comes to environmental impacts? When it comes to the impact on our wildlife, when our fire risk? Have you spoke with local emergency responders? I'll give you a couple more here and you guys can try to respond. Have you researched the impact on land values for local residents? The impact on our local ag? So I took about 10 questions there and tried to summarize them. But basically, the moral of the story of this section that I have here is the impact on the community. We've touched on that a little bit tonight, but have you guys, what research have you done for all those numerous things that I just mentioned?
So as part of the routing process, like I mentioned before, it's balancing those impacts. When we submit our application to the SCC, we will have a very robust routing study. It will define in great detail every single route, every single potential impact associated with that route, including natural resources, wetlands, cultural resources. We will outline all of that. And that when we get to a point after the second round of open houses where we continue to collect feedback and go back in an effort to really define these routes and try to define the route we believe is the best to bring forward to the SCC, we will do extensive analysis on those impacts. But we do that throughout the routing process as we're routing. It's all about balancing every single constraint and potential impact to all of those valuable resources. When you talk about safety, have we engaged with local EMS? Dominion Energy core value, I know we're here representing Fiberlync. This is the DOM zone. Our number one core value is safety. We have extensive measures in place for such things as fires and to prevent those. I know you see a lot in California about areas that have burned. Dominion Energy takes that very seriously. That's why we have a very good and dedicated forestry team for our capital projects who ensure that any danger trees, I'm just giving one example for safety and fire and emergency services, fire prevention, it's making sure that any identified danger tree, something that could fall within 10 feet of a conductor on the transmission line, has got to be taken out. We're not willing to take the risk of having one danger tree along our right-of-way that could potentially fall into our conductor and cause a fire.
Does that routing, where does that routing study live? Who sees that routing study?
That-
It finds its way into the SEC application,
Yes,
right?
yep, it's a part of the SEC application.
So it's public, right?
Yep.
Public.
And I can just answer that, yes, we are analyzing all of the above, and those will be detailed in great analysis as part of our routing study. But we haven't compiled all of that yet. We're compiling it. We're still refining the routes. But once we have final proposed routes, all of those impacts will be detailed.
So one of the things I'm gathering here tonight is that you all have leverage on us, I believe, but perhaps we have some leverage on you guys as well. With the substation and you guys with potentially running the line all the way through Culpeper, if it doesn't happen, Culpeper County. So I looked up your merger partner, NextEra Energy, with $212 billion in assets and $28 billion of revenue average per year. And then Dominion at assets at $116 billion, and the annual revenue is $17.5 billion. So I would ask, when you come back to Culpeper with your application, piggybacking on what Supervisor Lee said earlier about human impact, come back with some alternatives for Culpeper County. There's 3 miles there that's in Culpeper County. You know, let us see something there that that would be a consideration for human impact and for Richardsville and for Culpeper County. And I respectfully ask you that to work on that, those alternatives, considering we have leverage, y'all seem to have leverage. Potentially, you know, you can come back with something that these people here tonight would feel better about.
Noted. Thank you.
Supervisor Payne?
I'm trying not to be redundant, but I'm also trying to cover all my requests here tonight. I believe impact is, I think we've covered that a lot tonight, but that's what I'm seeing a lot with my questions. And I would, if you guys are working on that, that's something, when would we have these studies, these analysis on impact on all these, on our residents, our resources, our property values, all the fire and rescue, all these concerns that we have?
So the routing study will include impacts mostly to scenic, cultural, environmental resources, land resources, not so much real estate impacts as part of the routing study. That's probably addressed somewhere else in that. But all of the impacts, regardless, will be part of our filing with the State Corporation Commission, which will be available to the public once that's filed.
Okay, and also I've had a number of questions about eminent domain. Let me go back to my, so we've had, okay, would Fiberlync commit today not to use eminent domain now or in the future associated with projects against the unwilling landowners?
The process that we would use is, process Dominion uses, Fiberlync, we use the same process. We're going to evaluate the parcel where we need an easement. We're going to determine what the fair market value is. We're going to make that offer and then negotiate with the property owner for that easement. And you know, there are multiple rounds. It takes multiple weeks to work with property owners. So we're happy to take the time that is needed to do that. There are times when that process ends up in front of a court, but that's the last resort for us when we determine that there is no other option, and the property owner refuses to work with us. We make multiple attempts to move off of that and to move forward, but sometimes we have to go through that court-ordered process. And so, again, we try to resolve before we get there. It's nobody typically wins in a court-ordered settlement, but that's the process we would continue to use.
Yes, out of curiosity, have you already purchased the property, or do you just have an option on it?
We have a purchase service agreement. We expect that deal to be final within the next month.
So closed and settled in
Yes,
the next month?
Within the next month. That's the latest I've heard. I'm not involved personally, but that's the latest information I received.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So with that said, I've had several residents who've reached out, and they already have one line running through their property. But their concern is, all right, so we're going to have a 400-acre parcel that you're under contract, and roughly 80 acres for the substation, and another 47 for stormwater, buffering, whatever. What's to say in 5 years, 10 years, PJM comes back and says, wow, we've got to really do something. We've got to take off of that Yeat substation, and now we've got to go west, or we've got to go east, or we've got to do, what guarantees, is this something that Dominion would say, okay, we're willing to take this 400-acre parcel, put an 80-acre substation in there with 47 acres of stormwater and buffers, and we'll put the rest of it in the conservation easement, so we know we'll never have another line coming off of it. Is that something that's a possibility?
So we can't predict what PJM, what projects each year through their open window, right? I can't speak to what PJM's going to determine in the future, so I can't answer definitively what may happen at that property. That's a great question. I understand why you ask
And
it.
that, to my point,
Right.
as one supervisor,
Yep.
that hadn't helped your cause any about wanting to put that substation in Richardsville.
Sure.
So as far as I'm concerned, it can go on north and let them deal with it.
Yep, so the current plan is we know we've got to put that existing 500 kV tie, and that is the only plan at this point. As we work through this process and conditional use permit, we know we'll be working closely with staff and you all to identify conditions of that conditional use permit if we get to that point. And so we look forward to those conversations.
You go to Richardsville, and, what you see is that 515, and a lot of, pine, timber tracks, versus you go to Ashburn, and you see spaghetti wires going everywhere. And I don't think that not one resident in Richardsville wants to trade out their timber tracks for a spaghetti bowl of wires. So,
What's the timeline for the Germana line in Substation?
Those are my notes I can't find right off the top of my head. I'm not sure. I've got some of that information here in this papers. I'll find it. I just don't have it right in front of me.
One quick follow-up on Supervisor Bates. So what you're saying with the remaining land, what's not of the acreage that's left there, you wouldn't be willing to put that in some sort of easement?
I can't speak to those details right at this time. We're very preliminary. We don't know the full footprint. We don't have the design. We're very preliminary. So those conversations will be part of the process, absolutely.
I understand, because because with that being, I understand where you are in the process, but that does also, the concern of the residents or what happens when that substation, the thought is, and I hear this constantly, is the thought is, once it's approved, the remaining land is data centers, it's the future concern of what happens around it. So that's why I asked that question, that's why I follow up on it, because it's just like the question of will you come back after we don't approve the substation. It's just trying to get some parameters here, because everyone needs to know what they're dealing with. If there's future plans or the thought of a future plan around this, we need to know. So, just my thought.
Sure, thank you.
And then to follow up, the other thing that I'd also like to know is to go back to what I had asked you before is we're trying to say that this line is for our data centers, but we know that we have other projects that are going on and that have been talked about for the last couple of years that is going to be delivering to our data centers. If we could get a timeline on those projects and list those projects instead of saying it's part of this project, because clearly it's not. Or are they holding that project hostage, saying that if we don't do this, we don't get that?
A timeline for the delivery point requests?
Yes,
Yes.
on the 2199, that
Sure.
Remington and that kind of stuff, so that we know where we are in the queue too, because
Sure.
we don't want to falsely tell our citizens, oh, we've got to do the substation to get power to our data centers. But we don't want to go in blindly saying, if we don't do it, we are going to be 8 years down versus 3 years. Because to be quite honest, we're in a financial bind. And that data center money is going to be very good for us. So we don't want delays. So I want those timelines that you have on the current projects.
Sure. We can talk to the folks who know that
Yeah.
know that
So
information.
we're not held hostage on those.
So give me just one second, if you don't mind, Supervisor. The Culpeper Tech Zone was approved by the State Corporation Commission in March of this year, 2026. There are 3 substations that are expected to be energized in the spring of 2028. I think as part of that, Chandler, McDevitt, and Mount Pony are expected to be energized in 2028. A year later is the Palomino substation, energized in 2029. We've got the Germanna substation, my notes tell me is proposed to serve 2 Amazon data centers. I think Dominion is working on the pad for that substation, and we spent the last 6 months updating and fixing some work on that substation. I don't know if you're aware of that information or not. Then we've got the Cirrus and Kaiser substations, where we are working on some work in an existing 500-line corridor. We need to wreck and rebuild one of those circuits in that 500 corridor, build a new circuit, and we need some additional right-of-way in that same area. I don't have dates for the Cirrus and Kaiser substation energizations, but that's something that we can get a hold of. Bobby, please, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. My name is Bobby McMahon. I'm our communications point person for the construction projects. So Cirrus Kaiser, our projected energization date is late 2027. And so we've been working not only with Brian in the Office of Economic Development, as well as the developers on site. We understand that it is a priority for the county to move these projects forward. And we are continuing to work with our developers as well as our staff to find those opportunities to move these projects through the construction process as quickly as possible.
I guess, so our approved data centers, is this line needed to power our approved data centers?
So I would defer to my colleagues on that.
Is Joshua Falls TE needed to provide energy to approved data centers?
Because the concern is that this comes and it's not for what we have here, what's approved. You can hear from a number of my questions. It's what people fear may come.
Yeah.
So are we getting power to our approved ones without this line? Is this line needed to do that?
I think I think the short answer is I can't tell you right this second if the energy from Joshua Falls to Yeat, when it's energized, will flow and is needed to provide energy to those approved data centers. I would have to work with the planning department to determine sort of how are they planning to serve, what's the plan to serve those data centers. I would have to work to understand specifically what the math that they've done to say when those data centers are approved, when the substations are needed. I just don't know. What I do know is Joshua Falls to Yeat, once approved, once energized, will continue to provide electricity to this area and continue to provide, the economic benefits that counties like Culpeper and Spotsylvania and Stafford need for their economic activities if they choose to continue to approve data center development. This brings in electricity, brings in load to serve those projects, as well as provide reliable power. I can't tell you specifically for those, and I can work with the planning department to ask them that question, but I don't know the answer to that specifically right this second.
Others? If we're good, it's been about 1 hour, 45 minutes, and if we're going to continue, we need to take a break, but frankly, I think you've got questions, could get but all the ones that are written, could we get them to Dominion so that they could get answers, so that we're not missing any questions on behalf? And then could we even post the answers on our website?
Yes, absolutely.
Great. We're,
15-minute recess for like a few of us to ask y'all questions, to ask them? Because they brought forward information tonight.
actually, I understand they brought forward information. What I would prefer to do, one, I don't know their schedule, but two, there's going to be lots of time. And so if you think there's some reason that you need a brief recess, how about 5 minutes and get us the questions? Because I don't want the audience to not have the questions, but I also don't want to have the people here all evening. So if we could take, is that okay, Dwayne? You think 5 minutes to get questions real quick so that then we could ask? I want to keep the thing going rather than have us have a 15-minute.
I think that's a great idea. I say we take a break and
5-minute break.
5 minutes
We'll see you in 5 minutes.
yes.
Absolutely.
I'm hard to say, we started off looking rough, but we're looking pretty good now. Y'all looking good right now. Everybody's tuned in. You asked all the hard questions, and that's all they want.
Well,
The truth is the truth. It looks like we're gonna get through this.
that's the
But at
case.
least now,
To 500 kV. Dominion pulled the 230 kV yard. Therefore, the power has to go north to feed the 230 kV loop, correct?
So our planners are a big role in the TIAC meetings, and we can confirm that once we talk to our planning folks. Rob and I are not the technical experts to answer that question here and now. But like we said, we're happy to compile the questions and happy to get you answers, and you can post those widely. But we want to make sure that type of question is answered by the appropriate technical expert.
Okay, so you guys are working on that one. Okay, gotcha. Okay. Has Dominion received PJM's approval for the change of scope required to move the substation to Culpeper?
It's expected next month.
Okay, so the answer is yes, the next month. Okay.
Answer is technically not
No.
yet, but they expect it next month, to be clear.
Expected next month. Okay, all right. Okay, all right. All right, and, next question. In the future, do you plan to put multiple 765 kV loops terminating at Yeat?
I don't think we know the answer
Yeah.
to that.
No, Yeat is currently proposed to serve Joshua Falls to Yeat. 1765 currently proposed into that substation.
As data centers continue to be developed in the Commonwealth, we will continue to need to build electric transmission infrastructure to support data center development.
Okay,
And so-
understood. So, okay, so that's what is it, what's the answer?
I can't tell you today where the need would arise.
Okay, Okay.
That PJM would work with our planning team to determine the future needs of electric transmission infrastructure in this region.
okay.
Once again, let's let them answer the questions, but
And-
yes.
And I'm trying here. They're great questions, but not the best handwriting, so.
Come on, Dwayne, that didn't help it.
So, okay. Is it not correct that Culpeper has the discretion to refuse the Yeat substation, which decision the SCC could not overturn? We've kind of covered that already. So, do you guys want to briefly elaborate on?
The SCC, the State Corporation Commission, has jurisdiction over routing and siting electric transmission lines in Virginia. County jurisdictions have, counties, localities have jurisdiction over permitting substations.
Okay, okay. All right, next question. Would such a refusal by Culpeper not require a reconfiguration of the route to carry energy to data centers to the north?
I don't think we've considered that option, which essentially you're asking, have we considered routing or siting another substation besides Yeat and in Culpeper County? The answer is no.
Okay. Okay. All right. Would Fiberlync and Yeat be proposed without the data centers to the north?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, okay. All right. Did not. There you go, sir. All right. Did not this consortium. All right. Seek to run a line through Marshall, but was repelled, there you go, to abandon that plan following concentrated opposition from affected landowners. Thank you, sir.
Marshall, Virginia.
Yes, Marshall. Route 17.
Essentially, you know the answer. The question, I don't know. I don't understand the question.
I think maybe the substation was going to be somewhere further north in Falls-Yeat, and it is moved here. Was that because of landowner opposition to the north?
That was because of heavy constraints, which would have required very severe impacts to residences to the north. It was so constrained, threading the needle through there would have really been impactful. Again, I know this project is impactful. That was a really tough area, and so by reducing that line mileage, we were able to reduce some of those impacts and
Okay,
lower the
thank you.
cost.
So you moved the line to lessen the impact on that area?
Yes.
One of the only routing areas from connecting Falls-Yeat to Culpeper was essentially through that state wildlife.
Yeah, that was one of, the existing 500 kV line goes through CF Phelps.
Which you already have a right of way to expand.
You'd let them,
Correct.
but if you'd let them
We do have a
continue, let's
right-of-way there.
have it here. We're going to try to keep it as we said we were. Yep. Supervisor Deal.
So back then to the impacts, and back to leverage, and back to Supervisor Farish's worst-case scenario situation earlier that he mentioned. So a proposal or consideration, worst case. If we did deny the substation, and therefore you guys would be running the line all the way through Culpeper, which would be another, which would make it, what, 10 miles through Culpeper, 11 miles, whatever. If Culpeper worked with you on the substation, and it was hidden, it was buffered, and you couldn't see it, you wouldn't really know it was there unless you were in a helicopter, would you consider burying the line at the Culpeper, at the start of the Culpeper line all the way to the substation?
No.
No.
So then we're back to alternatives that Supervisor Lee brought up earlier. There's no alternatives. You wouldn't work with us at all on that.
There's nowhere in the world that underground 765 exists. It does not exist. The technology does not exist.
I had one more question that a gentleman spoke to me just a minute ago. He brought up something I've never heard of. He said a vulnerability study, basically the impact of like a terrorist threat or a time of war. Has some sort of study been done with a project of this size, a substation of 100 acres? Seems to be a pretty big target.
I'm not aware of one, and if one had been done, I'm not sure that we would be privy to that information, to be honest, but I'm not aware of a vulnerability study.
I wasn't until 5 minutes ago. So,
Yeah.
but it's obvious that it does exist, so maybe that's something we need to look into.
Supervisor Bates.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just real quick, because a couple people had come up, and with some of the town halls that were in Orange, were under the impression that you could bury that line. So could you, for the record, tell me what is the largest line that you can bury, that we have technology to bury? I know it's more expensive, but that's not what we're talking about. What is the largest line that Dominion can bury that you have the technology for?
We have underground 230 kilovolt lines that exist in Virginia. I assume we have some 115 kilovolt lines underground, but I'm not aware of them. But I'm aware that we've put 230 kilovolt lines
So
underground.
there's nothing larger than a 230 kVA?
Correct.
In the world, there may be the one going across the English Channel. Slightly different, but so anyway, answers relative to underground versus over, costs, what exists, what could exist would be good to have also. We'll just, I think, yeah.
Do they have one plan in Loudoun County?
We have, PJM has approved what's called an HVDC electric transmission project starting at the Heritage Substation in Brunswick County, going in existing rights-of-way up to the Mosby Substation in Loudoun County. HVDC, it's an underground high-voltage direct current transmission line. So what the difference is, it's DC direct current, so it would essentially transmit electricity from Brunswick County, where we have a lot of solar facilities. It would take that power by direct current directly to the Loudon substation in Mosby. There would be no taps of that, and it would deliver the power to that Mosby substation in what they call a converter station. So all of our electric transmission infrastructure that we have currently is AC power, alternating current. It goes where it goes, and you can't tell those electrons to go in a certain direction. With HVDC, you can direct that current to go from one substation to another. So it's essentially taking available power in the south side of Virginia and putting it into Loudoun County, into Mosby Substation.
Supervisor Lee?
The substation, the size of the substation certainly seems to be one of our biggest concerns. Is it possible for it to be smaller?
No. 765 kilovolt substation requires approximately 85 acres for the footprint.
So making it half the size of the proposal is not,
It would not meet the reliability requirements to perform appropriately, to meet the project goals and
and
what's
we
needed.
can't do a smaller substation. I don't know, I'm not an electrical engineer. We can't do a smaller one in Richardsville and a second smaller one farther north or in any other location.
So you would have to step down the 765 to the 500 kV, so those two would, yeah, you need to do those dually.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't build those
But that can't be,
separately.
that's not possible.
Not separately.
But can we look into any alternatives for a smaller, I know I'm putting you on the spot there, but again, as Supervisor Deal said, we are trying to work with you. We would like to have some meeting in the middle if this project has to be completed. We need some kind of compromises or alternatives.
And we're committed to working with you. We're very
Mm-hmm.
preliminary, and we've got a ways to go in additional meetings with staff and with you all.
I mean,
We're
and,
committed
you
to
know, the
that.
other concerns have been, and Supervisor Payne brought this up, and I've heard this concern repeatedly, the fact that would there be other large power lines coming off of that substation, okay? And again, the gentleman, Rob, I understand, we don't know, but to be honest, that's a pretty vague answer for the folks that are living in that area. I think our folks want to know, will that be happening or not? That's a pretty critical question. And so that was part of the reason that I wanted to ask about the smaller substation, that would sort of possibly eliminate that possibility happening.
Yeah, good question. And what we do know now is that 500 kV tap line will be required.
And that's also,
Yes, sir.
sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
So just to follow up on that, because that's a lot of the concerns that I get, that's to follow up on that, and I know I've already said it, but that's why I asked about the property around the substation, because a lot of my calls, people are texting me right now, so concerned about the spidering out from the substation. I get more concerns about that than I do even the power line. So that's why I asked those questions, and that's why,
Well,
yeah.
I guess a question for that would be, could things like that be addressed through the process of the CUP? So could there be discussions with you all relative to future land use of the area that you're not using outside of the 130, plus however the county wishes to adjust, of course, relative to its comprehensive plan, et cetera?
Yes, open to all of those discussions and look forward to more.
So through that, there may be a lot of tools. And very specifically, the reason I ask that is, I mean, if there is a discussion there is a chance to have conditions. That's why it's called a conditional use permit. But if they're in a discussion, there is a process that is not that. And we got a lot of steps to get there, but that may be the reality. Supervisor Lee, you working on other questions?
No, sir. No, good to go.
Mr. Chairman, I understand what you're saying. I still think still think it's important to point out that I understand the negotiation and the conditions of all these, and I understand what you're saying, but it's still important to point out that we did pass the resolution that this board said that we're not in the market we're not here to negotiate it. We said we don't want the power line, we don't want the substation.
That's absolutely. Well, further, we joined the county coalition to put our resources behind that. So I'm aware of that, and that is the case. That said, I thank you for those. Thank you for Valley Transmission. Thank you for those in the audience that have a very clear opinion. I see a heck of a lot of yellow. It's not hard to know what the opinion is. And with that, I guess a motion to adjourn is in order. We're adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Bob,